Evelyn's eyelids fluttered open, her vision blurry as she struggled to focus. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and something metallic. Blood. She lay on the cold, uneven floor of a vast, shadow-drenched church, its towering arches swallowing what little moonlight crept through the broken stained glass windows. Her head throbbed, and her limbs felt heavy, as though weighed down by invisible chains. The last thing she remembered was walking home from work, the quiet hum of streetlights guiding her path. Now she was here, alone. She pushed herself up, her palms scraping against rough stone, and took in her surroundings. The walls were covered in intricate, pulsing symbols, carved deep into the stone, their edges darkened with something wet and glistening. The symbols seemed to shift subtly under her gaze, as if alive. A faint chanting echoed from somewhere in the darkness, a low, guttural murmur that sent shivers down her spine. It was ancient, unrecognizable, but it felt wrong. Her breath hitched as her eyes adjusted to the dim light. The floor around her was littered with overturned candles, their wax pooled like frozen tears, and strange artifacts, dried herbs, bones, and jagged knives. But what made her stomach twist were the bodies. Dozens of them, arranged in a grotesque circle around a central altar, their lifeless eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Their throats were slit, their hands clasped as if in prayer. The sight was horrific, but what terrified her more was the realization she was the only one left alive. Panic clawed at her chest. She touched her own throat, half expecting to find a wound, but her skin was unbroken. Why was she spared? The chanting grew louder, the voices overlapping, whispering words she couldn't understand, but she felt their hunger, their anticipation. Someone, or something, was watching, waiting, and deep down, Evelyn knew the ritual wasn't over yet. Evelyn's bare feet pressed against the cold stone floor as she crept through the shadows of the derelict church. The air was thick with the metallic scent of dried blood, and the flickering light from a few scattered candles cast grotesque shapes on the walls. Every step she took echoed ominously, as if the building itself was watching her. Her trembling fingers traced over the cryptic symbols carved into the walls, their meaning lost to her. But the sight of them sent a chill down her spine. Scattered across the pews and altar were remnants of the ritual: blackened candles, shattered glass vials, and deep crimson stains that formed intricate, unnatural patterns. A rusted dagger lay abandoned near the pulpit, its blade crusted with something dark. Evelyn's breath hitched as she noticed a pile of tattered robes in the corner, their fabric stiff with dried blood. She didn't want to imagine what, or who, had been wearing them. Then she heard it, the whisper. At first, it was nothing more than a breath, a sigh curling against her ear. She whirled around, but the church remained empty. Then it came again, a hissing murmur in a language she shouldn't understand. Yet somehow, she did. Evelyn, her name echoed from the darkness, sending a jolt of terror through her. The voice was layered, as though spoken by multiple throats at once. Then, like a floodgate opening, the whispers intensified, swirling around her in a suffocating chorus. Fragments of her past flashed before her. A hand gripping her wrist, a hooded figure chanting, sharp pain, then nothing. The whispers were unlocking her memories, forcing her to remember what she'd lost. And with each passing second, they grew louder, closer, as if the unseen presence was wrapping itself around her, seeping into her mind. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she pulled the leather-bound journal from its hiding place beneath a loose floorboard. The pages were brittle and yellowed, the ink faded but still legible. The entries spoke of an ancient ritual, one meant to summon something unspeakable. The cult believed their deity, a being known only as the Watcher in the Dark, would grant them power beyond imagination. But the words carried a warning: the summoning required a sacrifice, a vessel strong enough to contain the entity. A chosen one. Her breath hitched when she saw her own name scrawled in the margins, circled in what looked like dried blood. F. Evelyn Mercer. The final piece. The journal detailed her abduction, her conditioning, the way they'd stripped her will away until she was pliant. She had no memory of any of it, but the proof was in her hands. As she read, the air grew thicker, colder. The candle she'd found flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows across the walls. Then she saw them, the shadow figures. They moved just beyond the edges of her vision, darting between the pews, their forms stretching and warping. When she turned, there was nothing. But the feeling of being watched gnawed at her. A scrape of wood against stone made her whirl around. The journal slipped from her grasp. The shadow at the far end of the church didn't vanish this time. It stood there, tall and featureless, its shape shifting like smoke. Then it lunged. Evelyn bolted, heart pounding, but the shadows were everywhere now, flitting across the walls, reaching out with jagged fingers. She could hear them, too, a chorus of whispers, hissing her name, calling her back. She stumbled into a side chapel, slamming the door shut behind her. The journal had fallen open to a final passage: the chosen must bear the mark, and the mark bears the beast. There is no escape. Evelyn's hands flew to her arm, where a jagged symbol had been carved into her flesh. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. The shadows under the door stretched toward her, and the whispers grew louder, more demanding. They knew her now, and they were hungry. Evelyn's head throbbed as fragmented images flashed behind her eyelids, a hand clamping over her mouth, the scent of damp earth, the sting of rope biting into her wrists. The memories came in jagged pieces, sharp enough to cut. She had been taken, dragged into this rotting church against her will. The ritual hadn't been her choice. The air grew heavier, thick with the metallic tang of old blood. A figure emerged from the shadows, his robes tattered, his face hidden beneath a grotesque mask carved from bone. The cult leader. Evelyn's breath hitched as he stepped forward, his voice a rasping whisper. You don't remember, do you? But it's too late now. The binding is complete. Her stomach twisted. Binding. The word slithered through her mind, unwanted. The journal's words rushed back. The chosen one shall bear the mark, and the darkness shall cling to her soul. She looked down at her arms, where black veins pulsed beneath her skin, spreading like ink in water. The entity wasn't just near her, it was inside her. The cult leader chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. It's beautiful, isn't it? You're its vessel now. Its voice. Its will, Evelyn recoiled as the shadows around them writhed, twisting into grasping hands, into faces with hollow eyes. The demon was awake, and it was hungry. She stumbled back, but the whispers surged louder, filling her skull. You belong to us, they hissed, in voices that were hers and not hers at all. The cult leader's grin widened behind the mask. A run if you want. It won't matter. It will always find you. Evelyn's vision blurred. The church walls pulsed, the symbols glowing faintly, sealing her fate. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a sacrifice. And the ritual wasn't over. The air in the church grew thick, pressing against Evelyn's skin like a suffocating blanket. The demon's presence was no longer a whisper, it was a roar, vibrating through her bones. Visions flashed before her eyes, vivid and cruel, her mother writhing in agony, her younger brother trapped in a room filling with black tendrils of smoke. Their screams echoed in her skull, overlapping with the demon's guttural laughter. She clutched her head, nails digging into her scalp, but the images wouldn't stop. A cold hand grasped her shoulder, though no one stood beside her. The touch seared like ice, and the whispers slithered into her ears. You belong to me now, the voice hissed. Finish what they started or watch them die. Evelyn stumbled backward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The journal's words haunted her. Completing the ritual would sever the bond, but at what cost? The pages had spoken of a sacrifice, a life for a life. The shadows around her writhed, forming grotesque shapes. Faces of the cult members who had died in the ritual, their mouths stretched in silent screams. Their hollow eyes accused her. You survived. You're the reason we're trapped here. Evelyn's knees buckled as the weight of their judgment crushed her. She had to make a choice, let the demon consume her loved ones, or embrace the darkness and become its vessel. A flicker of movement caught her eye. The cult leader's journal lay open on the floor, its pages glowing with an eerie light. The final incantation stared back at her, the ink pulsing like a heartbeat. The demon's voice dripped with mock sympathy. It's the only way. Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached for the book. The cost was unthinkable. But so was the alternative. The air in the church was thick with the scent of old blood and burning incense as Evelyn stood facing the cult leader, his skeletal frame draped in tattered robes. His hollow eyes gleamed with zeal, his lips curled into a smirk. You cannot escape it, Evelyn, he rasped. The bond is eternal. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. I won't let you use me. The demon's presence slithered between them, its laughter a chorus of distorted voices. Shadows crept along the walls, forming grotesque shapes that lunged and retreated, teasing her senses. The cult leader raised a rusted ritual dagger, its blade glinting in the dim candlelight. The ritual must be completed, he hissed. With or without your consent. Evelyn lunged, knocking the dagger from his grip. They grappled, their struggle sending pews crashing to the floor. But the demon toyed with them, whispering lies, twisting their movements. One moment, Evelyn saw her sister's face in the cult leader's sneer, the next, his hands became monstrous claws. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. A sudden surge of clarity struck her. The journal had spoken of the bond's weakness, sacrifice, not hers, but his. With a desperate cry, she shoved the cult leader toward the altar. The moment he touched it, the shadows surged forward, consuming him. His screams were swallowed by the entity's ravenous hunger. Silence. Then a whisper in her ear, "You're mine now." The demon wasn't finished with her yet. Evelyn's hands trembled as she stood over the lifeless body of the cult leader, his blood pooling on the cracked stone floor of the church. The air was thick with the stench of iron and something darker, something that clung to her like a second skin. She had won, or so she thought. But the silence that followed was shattered by a low, guttural laugh, echoing from the shadows. The demon wasn't done with her. The walls seemed to pulse as the whispers returned, slithering into her ears like serpents. You belong to us, they hissed, their voices a chorus of agony and malice. Evelyn staggered back, clutching her head, but the words burrowed deeper, twisting her thoughts. She could feel the demon's presence, a weight in her chest, a chill down her spine. It had been bound to her, and no amount of running would change that. Desperate, she fled the church, the night air biting at her skin. But the farther she ran, the louder the whispers grew. Streetlights flickered as she passed, and in their dim glow, she caught glimpses of shadowy figures, always just out of sight, always watching. Her reflection in a shattered storefront window grinned back at her, its eyes black and hollow. Evelyn's breath came in ragged gasps as she reached her apartment, slamming the door behind her. For a moment, there was silence. Then the whispers began again, this time in her own voice. "You can't escape. You never will." She sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. The ritual had left its mark, and the demon's grip was unbreakable. Days turned into weeks, but the torment never ceased. Every mirror showed her a stranger, every shadow hid a grinning face. Evelyn knew the truth now: she hadn't survived the ritual, she had become part of it. And the demon would never let her forget.